Each of the candidates will get a 2-minute opening statement, and they got to draw ping pong balls here to go in order. So we will be going in order, in the order that they're sitting in right now. The second question will start with Mr. Summers. The third question will start with Mr. Liu, and so on, and we will move our way through and restart so that everybody gets to go first sometimes and everybody gets to go last sometimes. The goal here is to ask questions that give you insights into the candidates, that are fair and honest, and give you a chance to really compare these 4 candidates one against the other. We really want to thank our partners in this, the Monterey College of Law and the Monterey County Bar Association, who've helped us set this forum up, help us work with the candidates, and have widely distributed the information. So I hope that this will be interesting and informative. Thank you all very much for coming. So, Ms. Weldon, you get to go first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Monterey College of Law, and the Monterey County Bar Association for co-hosting tonight's forum and giving us the opportunity to address each of you. I first began serving as a judge pro tem on the Monterey County Superior Court in 2008. And I'll speak more directly into the microphone so that I can be heard at the back of the room. When I first began serving as a judge pro tem, I began hearing some of the most difficult case types that come before the Superior Court. And after I had served in that capacity for a period of 3 years, I was unanimously selected by our Superior Court judges to serve as a Superior Court Commissioner, where I preside over trials and hearings, making restraining orders that protect victims of domestic violence, and making orders that protect children in our community. I understand the need to protect individual rights while also protecting our children from gang membership and gang involvement. I learned at a very early age when my parents died in a fatal car accident the need to work hard and to stay committed to myself and to my goals and to my dreams. And I worked my way through college and law school, believing in the importance of justice and fairness for all people. And that's why I decided that I wanted to enter the legal profession. I have been honored to be endorsed by all of our endorsing local judges, by appellate justices and retired judges, statewide and local law enforcement, as well as our criminal defense attorneys. And I would be honored to have your vote, and I look forward to responding to your questions. Thank you.
My name is Steve Summers. I am a deputy district attorney. I've been a prosecutor for 16 years. Just today I appeared in court and I got to say, Steve Summers on behalf of the people. That's an honor that I don't take lightly. When you appear in court and you say on behalf of the people, what it means is you're not representing anyone, you're not representing the person who's paying you, you're representing everyone. And as the representative of everyone, your goal is not to get a conviction or get an acquittal. My goal when I represent the people is to make sure that justice is done. And if that justice requires the case be dismissed or the charges be reduced, I am honored to do that. If it requires that the community is protected from a criminal wrongdoer, I'm happy to do that as well. I have had over 81 jury trials in my career. I have prosecuted over 29 different people for murder. It's a challenge, but it's something that I have always met and been glad to do. I'm glad to be able to stand up for the protection of our community and the rights of defendants, for that matter. When Russell Scott called me, that's Judge Scott, who's retiring, he's been on the bench for 20 years, and said that he wanted me to run for his seat, that it was going to be open because he was retiring and he felt that I was the right person for the job. I hesitated because it's an awesome responsibility. But when called to serve, I've always felt that there's an obligation to do what you can. I have 2 young children, and The idea of being able to serve in the capacity of Superior Court judge and make a better county for them in the future and protect the system and make sure that they grow up in a better place than I've grown up, that's something that I had to do. So that's why I'm running for Superior Court judge.
Well, first of all, thank you all for coming and thank you for having me. I want to share with you how grateful I am to have this opportunity to run in this election to serve as a Monterey County Superior Court judge. I'm grateful to take the experiences I've had, the knowledge I've learned, and the balanced perspective I believe I've gained from having been a lawyer for nearly 20 years on both sides of the courtroom. And I want to take those things in order to serve our community, not only to have a positive impact on the judiciary, but also on the entire Monterey County community as a whole, where I call home. Just by way of background, I grew up in Southern California. My parents are Chinese immigrants, and I got my first law job in New York City, where I was a prosecutor in the Bronx District Attorney's Office, handling special victims cases. I became a supervisor and later the Deputy Bureau Chief, handling sex crimes, child abuse, and domestic violence. And there I was honored to have the role of training other prosecutors into how they should do their trials. And I got to do that not only on the local level, but on the state level and the national level as well. I also trained officers from the New York City Police Department and interacted with victim advocacy groups as well as other prosecutorial agencies. But I got married, we had a little girl, and we came back to California. And here I got a job in Monterey County as a prosecutor again, and I continued this work in the major felony unit for 3 more years. But my experience has an additional facet, which is for about the last 6.5 years, I've worked as a defense attorney in private practice in my own small business. And I've gotten to see another side of the criminal justice system. And I believe that having been a prosecutor in New York as an assistant DA, a supervisor, a deputy bureau chief, a deputy DA, and a defense attorney has given me some unique insights in how to serve all of the people of Monterey County. I appreciate that all of you are here to learn more about the candidates, and I look forward to earning your support. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for having us here and for giving me the opportunity to appear before you. My name is Luma Serrano Williams. I am an administrative law judge with the state of California, the Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board, and I am a member of the league. Yay! I attended our local schools, and I have a BA in English Literature from UC Berkeley. I have a law degree from Columbia University in New York City, and I am licensed to practice law in California, New York, Washington, D.C., and in federal court in the Eastern District of California. I was appointed to my current position in 2008. It is a high-paced kind of job where I hear 28 trials per week. I do the compressed schedule, so in 3.5 days, I handle 28 plus trials, depending on how many judges got in sick that week. It is, I administer oaths, I take evidence, I make rulings, I issue decisions. Prior to my current position, I practiced law for 17 years at the county, state, federal levels. I have been in court most of my time. I also did spend time in corporate securities work for approximately 6-7 years. I worked with major law firms in San Francisco, New York, and also in Palo Alto. I did mergers and acquisitions, venture capital financing, and initial public offerings. I am running for judge because I believe that I have the experience, the work skills, as well as the education to represent the people of Monterey County from the bench. And I hope that you will give me that opportunity. Thank you.
Please explain the difference, if any, between an administrative law judge and a superior court judge.
Superior Court judge represents the judiciary of one of the 3 branches of government. There's the executive, the judicial, and the legislative. They set apart from the other branches and rule basically on laws that are passed by the legislature. And currently, as a prosecutor, I'm a member of as a prosecutor, a part of the administrative side. Administrative law, on the other hand, is not part of the court system officially. It is a separate program which is oftentimes workers' compensation type claims and that kind of thing. So rather than being part of the court system, it's part of the administrative system. And I guess that separates the two.
I think I can keep my answer brief. As we stated, we have 3 branches in our government: the judicial, the legislative, and the executive. The superior courts are part of the judicial branch, which is part of what's designed in our Constitution. The way I understand the role of an administrative law judge, one is sitting to my left, is that it is part of an internal agency. We see workers' compensation agencies, we have the unemployment insurance agency, and the administrative law judge is there to decide disputes within the agency, narrowly tailored to a specific topic. So in that sense, it's much different than a superior court judge who could be assigned to hear a wide variety of matters, be it civil, criminal. We see land use cases, we see government cases, we obviously see criminal cases.
I will read you the definition from the Black's Law Dictionary as to what an administrative law judge is. It is, quote, an official who presides at an administrative hearing and who has the power to administer oaths and take testimony, rule on questions of evidence, and make factual and legal determinations. You do have them at the state and at the federal levels. At the federal level, it's immigration, also Social Security. At the state level, you have workers' comp, DMV, the Office of Administrative Hearings, as well as the Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board. It is a very specialized area that you deal with. The Superior Court is definitely much broader in the scope that it covers. And we are a little bit more relaxed in the administrative courts in terms of the evidence rules. We can apply them, but they're a lot more relaxed. We can give the evidence rules as much weight as we feel that it deserves, or they deserve. And the whole purpose of the administrative courts is to actually ease the burden on the trial courts. So we get to hear matters at that level so that they don't clog up the courts, beginning with the Superior Court. But matters that are decided by my agency go over to the Superior Court next.
As been explained, for the administrative law judge, the work is limited to an administrative review of the denial of a government claim for benefits, unemployment insurance benefits, or workers' comp benefits. That is the limited scope of the work. However, for the Superior Court judge who serves in the judicial branch of government, there is just a vast amount of case types and divisions and assignments that a Superior Court judge needs to be prepared and able to review and hit the ground running, including civil law, criminal law, juvenile law, dependency, family law, drug court. It takes a vast amount of knowledge and experience to be prepared and qualified to serve as a Superior Court judge. All of the rules of evidence apply for Superior Court judges. We need to have those in place. We hear jury trials. We are open to public scrutiny. We have cameras in the courtroom, and we cover all of the issues that are pertinent to the members of our community. Thank you.
Describe specifically your legal expertise as a licensed attorney and/or judicial officer in the specific case types that will be heard by the Monterey County Superior Court judges.
One, I want to caution the use of the word expertise. That actually has a particular legal definition. So what I can say is that for almost 20 years, I've worked in criminal law. I said some of this in my initial comments. Having been a prosecutor in New York City, having supervised as a prosecutor in New York City, and also having been a prosecutor here in California in Monterey County. Since moving to the other side of the justice system and having the full breadth of the criminal justice system, I've been in private practice doing also criminal defense work. In my role as a criminal defense attorney, a lot of the situations I've handled have also overlapped with civil practitioner matters. And so we've had clients and cases that dealt with family law matters, that dealt with contract issues, that dealt with issues of independent contractors, theft issues that have involved administrative matters. And so I've gotten to learn quite a bit from a number of the private civil attorneys, as well as a number of the civil judges who have offered to support me and give me access to their resources.
My first job out of law school was with the LA County District Attorney's Office. I was in part of an entering class of 50, what we call baby DAs. We were not given that designation because we had to pass the bar first and also the professional responsibility exam. So we were what's called law clerks, certified by the Bar Association to be able to appear in court. It was a full-time position. You worked, you had a calendar, you had to manage that calendar, and you acted in court as a full-fledged DA without the title. Not until you pass the bar and the professional responsibility exam do you get promoted to that title, although you have all of the responsibilities of an assistant DA. I've also practiced with the Public Defender's Office and with a private attorney here in Monterey County. I did defense work as well as family law. I also practiced in the civil arena. I have done corporate and securities work and workers' compensation, which is the closest that I can see to civil practice, where I took hundreds of depositions doctors and claimants and employers, making sure that injured workers got the benefits that they were entitled to by law. I learned negotiation skills both in my corporate work and in my workers' comp work, which are very valuable in the civil arena.
When I was appointed as a Superior Court Commissioner in 2011, I received extensive judicial training that is only available to appointed Superior Court judges and commissioners that's offered by the Administrative Office of the Court. And that training was in every single case type that appears on the Superior Court bench. It was not just the intensive 2-week trainings that we were subjected to, but I say that in a positive way, but throughout the year we are given constant training opportunities. And in family law and the domestic violence cases that I hear, there is an interplay in almost every single case type that's heard in Superior Court. The guardianship matters, the direct court, the civil court, dependency court, juvenile court. The families that I see in my court are also in other related case types, and I take judicial notice of what is happening in those related cases. So I do have the experience to be able to be assigned to any of our departments. Thank you.
In my career, I have had cases that have such wide-ranging sets of facts that I have always had to just learn new areas. With each new case that comes in, there's always something new to learn. I've handled major fraud cases where the amounts that have been stolen have been in the tens of millions of dollars. I've covered political corruption cases where we've delved deep into the election code. I've handled numerous gang cases, from the fairly mundane gang crime cases all the way up to double murders in the gang arena. I started in domestic violence after handling misdemeanors and was the domestic violence deputy, so I learned the dynamics of family violence and dependency and that kind of thing. I've handled juvenile cases. I've been the drug deputy DA, so I understand drugs and such. I've dealt with major car accidents, homicides, vehicular homicides, manslaughters, that kind of thing. And of course, being a trial attorney, understanding the evidence code and how that works in court is essential. And I have a lot of experience on it as well.
Can you explain how Plato's 4 cardinal virtues would guide your decision-making as a judge?
Oh gosh. My philosophy is a bit rusty, forgive me, I didn't quite prepare for that. I hope that they are justice, fairness, impartiality, independence, and that's how I have guided my life, and I hope that those are the right cardinal ones here. Thank you.
That is a fabulous question for whoever drafted it. What guides me in my work now on the Superior Court bench is a passion for justice. I am known in my work for being firm, but for also being fair, and for understanding human nature and the plight of the people who are coming before me. I have had the opportunity to go out into our community, North County, South County, on the peninsula, and find out what are the specific needs of the individuals across our broad county. What are the needs of the at-risk children whose families are appearing in front of me, and how can we better meet those needs? When I take the bench, it is an honor, but it is also something that I take very seriously. I treat everyone who appears before me with fairness, with respect, and with dignity, and those are the principles that I believe are most important to be aware of and cognizant of when you take the bench.
I've seen a lot of very tough people come into court who don't trust the system, who don't trust police, don't trust judges, don't trust lawyers at all. And when they feel they haven't been listened to, they haven't been shown respect, it only makes it worse. And I have seen judges who take their time and give every individual, every citizen who walks before the court that respect, an open-mindedness, belief that an effort to be heard. That's what they want to be heard. They want to believe that the court is there for them. These kind of virtues, these kind of civic virtues can change people. I've seen people walk out saying, well, you know, even though you sentenced me to prison, at least you gave me a chance and you listened to me and you appeared to be fair. That kind of public virtue, I think, is essential in a Superior Court judge.
I have to make a confession. I was a philosophy major. And I don't remember the 4 virtues. But I do remember one thing that I always took away from Plato, which is, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but that true knowledge comes from knowing that you are ignorant. And that is something that I've carried with me throughout my life and will carry with me if elected to the position of judge. And that's because you don't know anything until you realize there's a lot to learn in life. And this is something that I've followed throughout. As an attorney, I don't walk into court thinking that I know what's going on with everything. I do the research, I do the work, and I try to figure out every issue and every possible point that may come up. If I'm chosen to be a judge, that's how I'd approach the bench and all the decisions I have to make. You can't judge a book by its cover. You have to know all of the facts that are inside. You have to know every word on every page. And in every case, and this is something I've learned from being on both sides of the courtroom, every case has another facet to it. And there are multiple dimensions to everything.
What was your undergraduate major and how did it affect the way you are going forward and how you will be as a judge?
Thank you. My undergraduate major was in sociology. I have always been interested in people, in relationships, in what motivates people. But probably that resulted from my childhood, that I had a difficult childhood of not having a familial relationship with parents. But I understood about community, and I understood about the importance that an adult can have in a child's life of giving the hand up, of giving a child a belief and faith that they could do it. They could move forward and reach for goals and follow through and do it on their own if they really believed in themselves and wanted it. My degree in sociology helps me every day on the bench in dealing with the families who come before me and the domestic violence issues that are before me. I have a deeper understanding because of my undergraduate degree. Thank you.
Ms. Wilden's undergraduate degree was at UC Santa Barbara, and so was I. We both went there, I don't believe at the exact same time. I had a double major, actually, one in political science and then one in environmental studies. Environmental studies, I learned about water use, which I think is something important in this county, land use, environmental impact reports, pollution. The political science end of it, we studied government, the law, political structures. So all of those things add up to an understanding of what a judge has to know or has to learn more about. I followed up in law school at an environmental law school, Vermont Law School, which was known as a top environmental law school. So I tried to meld those two together into one career and ultimately took a turn into criminal law, but it's been an excellent choice. So I guess everything prepares us for the future, and certainly my undergraduate degree did.
I might have answered this question already, but I'm going to expand on that a little bit. A lot of people don't know what a philosophy degree is all about. And, when I first got into it, I thought it was that you sat under a tree and you thought about things like life and the meaning of life. And it's really not. There's a lot of logical analysis that goes on. And what I particularly liked about my philosophy studies was the issue of ethics and morality, and the study of what makes something morally correct and what makes something morally incorrect. And these are some of the things that and you combine that with a sense of logic and a logical analysis, whether something makes sense and something doesn't make sense. And I think that this actually has a direct application to the practice of law, and in particular to presiding over matters in dispute.
I was an English major at Berkeley, and I chose English because I was not a native English speaker. I was born in Mexico, came to the States when I was 6 years old, and did not speak a word of English. And my father said, the moment you arrive, you become an American. You leave your Spanish behind. You don't speak a word of it at home. That's how I grew up. For me, it was a challenge to learn English. Reading Chaucer and Shakespeare was really difficult for me in high school because we were migrant field workers. I never stayed in one school more than a month or two. So I was migrating continuously through California, Washington, Oregon. Got to see a lot of our country doing that. And I later on decided to go to law school, and the skills that I picked up as an English major have been fabulous. I do at least 28 decisions per week. I do points and authorities. I have overturned a lot of judges on appeal, and that was phenomenal. I had such a great feeling when I did that. And so that's how it helps me with my writing.
What are your thoughts about media in the courtroom?
Under the appropriate circumstances, I think it's fantastic. I believe that the courtroom belongs to the people of the community. The judges work for them. They have an obligation to make sure that the courts are working appropriately, that justice is being done in their name and being done right. Where the media exists to make sure that the voters, the people who own the courtrooms, know what's going on and know that it's being done right. At the same time, there are victims whose lives are put in danger if their photos are shown, if their names are published, if their privacy is not respected. There are children who have to come into court and speak about various matters. We should protect those witnesses, those victims, those people so they feel safe coming into the courtroom, they feel comfortable coming into the courtroom, and balance that against the public's right to know. There is an appropriate balance to be met. I think our courts do a fairly good job of it now.
One of the key factors in what a judge does is balance the rights of everyone against one another to come out with the appropriate resolution. And the right of the public to know what's going on in the courthouse is just the same as the right of all of you to find out about the candidates that you're going to be voting for. It's about information. And so the right of the media to be in the courtroom is a sacred right, and it needs to be respected. But that also needs to be balanced against the rights of those who are in that courtroom. Having had young children testify for me in cases as a prosecutor, having had clients who are accused but not convicted in court, I understand that the media can be a very threatening presence, but there are overriding principles and that people need to know, and that's the duty of a judge, which is to balance those principles. So with appropriate safeguards, the media should be in the courtroom, but those safeguards also have to be carefully weighed and imposed.
Everything is on a case-by-case basis. Transparency is very important. We need to know what's happening in our community. Media needs to know so that they can report to us truthfully and responsibly. Also, it's a balancing act. You do have witnesses who fear for their lives. You have children. You have people who need to be protected. And it is on a case-by-case basis, and the judges should take all of that into account. It is a balancing act. It is always about balance. What is in the public's interest as well as in the interest of the parties involved.
Except for a limited set of circumstances as have been described this evening, the media does have the right to be in the courtroom, and the courts are open to public scrutiny. But I hear cases where sometimes children do need to come into the courtroom and do need to testify, and they need to be protected from having their identities and their conversations recorded. There are other situations where we do need to protect the rights of witnesses. We have confidential fee waiver hearings and other confidential matters where we are doing the weighing act that's been described and making sure that there is a balance between the need to protect certain individuals in our community versus the need for transparency and the right for access to the public. And I do care very much about the children who are in the courtroom testifying, because we want to make sure that they're not being prejudiced through this process, and that if they do need to come into the courtroom, they know that they feel safe and secure, and that going forward they can trust our courts.
What is your theory of judicial activism? What are some incidents where it's appropriate or inappropriate?
I think I need to clarify, but I think when we say judicial activism, that's sort of the sentiment that perhaps judges are legislating from the bench, making up their own laws. That's the way I understand that concept. And so if that's the understanding I have, I think it's very important for judges and everybody in a position of power to understand their role. This is something I've learned as a defense attorney in particular, because as a prosecutor, your role is usually fairly broad, and you're seeking to prosecute an individual who's accused of a crime. As a defense attorney, you need to know what your role is too, and there are limits to that role. And I think anyone in a position of power has to understand the limits of that power. So in our system, we have a legislature that makes the rules, and the judges are to interpret it and impose it. And so within the bounds of interpretation that is reasonable, I think that's the proper role of a judge. But beyond that, you're stepping into somebody else's territory, another branch of the government, and that's not where judges belong.
I think a judge's role is to look at the law, interpret the law, and apply the law to the facts. We have three branches of government. There is a reason for that. And within limits, there are limits to what a judge can do, and that is interpret the law. That's what I try to do with my current position. That is the boundaries that I have. There is room to get creative, though. Sometimes a very new, novel issue comes before you, and that is a great opportunity for you to create law. So within what's allowed by the law, you can actually go a little bit beyond and make some law.
I believe very strongly that the role of a judge or a judicial officer is to interpret and apply the law and not to go outside of the law. I believe that if there needs to be a change in the law, that needs to be addressed by the legislature. And there are mechanisms in place to allow that to happen. Also, if there needs to be a modification of the California Rules of Court, there's a mechanism for allowing that process to happen. But certainly when I take the bench, if there's a law that I must follow and I may not like that law, I will let the parties in front of me know exactly what the law is. I will recite it into the record and let them know this is the basis for the decision that I'm about to make. My own opinion about whether it's a good law or whether it should be modified does not enter into my ruling.
I strongly believe no one is above the law. That has been something that has driven my entire career. I have and am prosecuting police officers for violating the law. I would always follow the law. I don't believe that judges can just put aside the parts of the law that they personally don't like or that they would change, that they would do different. I think the absolute essential to being a judge is a 100% buy-in that the law rules us. The best thing about this country is the rule of law. If you look at a country like Mexico, wonderful people, wonderful resources, everything going you could ask for in Mexico is there. Gas, oil, agriculture, and yet it struggles because they haven't yet gotten the rule of law where everyone there, judges, governors, police officers, understand they are not above the law. And that is something we fight hard for in this county, and I think I would, as a judge, make sure we continue to fight for it.
Please share your perspective on the manner in which judicial retirements and endorsements are announced.
Well, I think that topic has been covered. And my personal feeling is that it's wonderful that people support other people. We all want support. We all want endorsements. We all want friends to encourage us and recommend us to others. And I think that we have a democratic process and that democracy should be followed and respected. And that it's really wonderful when people who are retiring retire so that everybody else can have a fair opportunity to go and pursue that particular position. And hopefully we will have the process in place in the future so that other people can have the opportunity at an equal level to participate in that process.
The fact of the judicial cycle, the election cycle every 6 years, seems surprising to some people who understand that in many counties, and certainly in our counties, the governor very often appoints judges. Some people are unaware that in fact every 6 years their office is up for re-election. But it's a matter of public knowledge, and in this case it was a matter of public knowledge that 3 of our judges could retire if they sought to this year. And anyone who was interested in seeking a seat and going through the election process then had the ability to do so. We knew back in 2008 when we had judges who were running for office that those seats would come up again in this year, this election cycle. I feel that in terms of an endorsement, it is the highest honor that one can receive to be acknowledged by your peers, by the Monterey County Superior Court bench, that you are doing the work that they recognize as being the quality work of a Superior Court judge.
The judicial canon of ethics encourages judges to seek to improve the administration of justice. One of the things it encourages judges to do is to seek out good candidates and recommend people for the bench. Judges are prohibited from getting involved in any other political races. They can't tell you who should be mayor. It's against the law for them to say anything good against ethics about the governor. But they're uniquely qualified to know who would make a good judge, and they are encouraged to seek good candidates for office. When Judge Scott's term came up, his 20 years on the bench was going to be reached, and he wasn't going to run for office. It was widely known throughout the courthouse that he was retiring. And when he came to me and asked me to run, he said he felt that I was the right person for the job, and I was honored by that. And I feel nothing wrong with that. It wasn't a secret. There was no last-second application for the positions, and it was done entirely above board and appropriately.
My perspective on judicial retirements is that they deserve to retire, and I congratulate them. My perspective on the endorsements is that they should endorse. A judge knows what the job of a judge is and is qualified, very well qualified, to choose who they think should sit in the position of a judge. Which is why when I entered the race, I sought the endorsements of many judges, and I spoke to many judges. And I'm proud to say that out of the 29 judges who've made endorsements in my race, I'm endorsed by 21 of them. So I would agree. They are the people who know what the job entails, and I'm proud to say that a great deal of them are supporting me. Thank you.
What's your experience working with courtroom staff?
Great deal of experience. I initially came to the court as a judicial attorney, and I worked with staff very closely in a different capacity than I do now. Courtroom staff are there, they are not your employees. That's the first thing that it's important to know. But we have a very collegial relationship because we're doing the work of the court. We're serving the people in our community. We're working together for the greater good. Certainly in the family law department, there are many of us who are all trying to accomplish something really important for each of the families who come before us. And it's a good feeling at the end of the day that we have each contributed toward resolving issues in our community and doing the very best job that each of us can in our own separate ways. I believe that we have amazing staff members in the court, and I'm honored to be able to work with them in the various capacities that I've held.
I think a lot of people would be surprised at how many different people work every day in a courtroom. Beyond the judge, there's the courtroom clerk who runs the show in so many ways. They're amazing people. There are interpreters who are in various languages, and luckily we have DLI nearby, and no matter what language comes up, we can pretty much find an interpreter to come in. Bailiffs are sheriff's deputies who work for the sheriff. And in my career, I've gotten to know many of the courtroom staff. Many of my best friends are courtroom staff. I spend so many hours in a courtroom that I have good friends who are clerks, bailiffs, interpreters, and judges. And it's a great working relationship everyone has. Everyone, the defense attorneys, the prosecutors, we're by and far, it's just the friendliest place, and everyone's very professional. And it's been a great part of being in the judicial system.
Thank you. My experience with courtroom staff has been overwhelmingly positive. In addition to clerks, bailiffs, and interpreters, we also have court reporters. And what I see in this courtroom staff is that they are in some ways the silent geniuses of the courtroom, because next to judges, they see it all. In fact, they may even see more of it. While the judges are in chambers, they're the ones who are still in the courtroom interacting with the attorneys. And so in every case I've ever had, that was really almost every single case I've ever had, I've always sought out the opinions of those in the courtroom, the bailiff, the interpreter, the clerk, and the reporter. And so, actually, when it came time to run for judge, I also sought out their endorsements. And I'm happy to say that I'm endorsed by, I want to say 14 court reporters, court clerks, and just today an interpreter offered me her endorsement. I didn't even ask for it. So I think the court staff is wonderful. I think they know a lot more than people give them credit for because they see it all.
In my current agency, we are divided by regions. I work in the San Jose region. My headquarters are in San Jose. However, we have a satellite office in Salinas, and I work in Salinas. In the satellite offices, you do not have clerical staff. So I'm the bailiff, I'm the clerk, I'm the receptionist, I do the copying, I am the judge, I'm the translator, because we get people who do not speak English. And so I wear lots of different hats, and when people are having crisis, I'm the social worker, and I help them get jobs, and I do all kinds of different things. From my experience in the criminal courts, it's a team effort, and people are to be commended for their wonderful work. They do a lot of work, and I think if elected, I'll be very spoiled with all the help I'll get. It's a wonderful team effort, and they are very knowledgeable. I enjoy very much working in the courthouse. The clerks, the court reporters, the judges, everybody was just fantastic, knowledgeable, and really super to work with.
How would you handle a death penalty trial differently than any other felony trial, if differently at all?
Death penalties trials are governed by generally the same rules. There are some additional rules. There are changes in how much has to be reported, the various rules for representing yourself. The basic function of the courtroom, though, remains the same. It's a different penalty. There's no question when the serious cases happen, when a panel of 200 jurors walk into a room and you tell them the charges, and they hear the word murder, the entire room goes quiet. Every juror who was sitting there hoping that they had a DUI case and they could be gone tomorrow, all of a sudden realizes, oh, this just got real. Death penalty takes that up one more step. It's a somber event, and it does change the way everything happens. But like all cases, it has to be dealt with the same set of rules, same way every time.
There's really no question that a death penalty case is a whole different level of kind of case. And to some degree, I think you would think that the degree of diligence that's imposed or used in presiding over a death penalty case would be greater. The reality is we need to apply the same level of diligence, the same high level of diligence to every single case that comes before a judge. But on the death penalty case, what you also have are various logistical differences. As Mr. Summers mentioned, you're going to have 200 or more jurors coming in. You're going to have two different phases of the trial. There's going to be a great deal of media who may be present. And so your ability to handle the breadth, the volume, the amount of detail has to come up a few notches. And so we want to be as diligent in every single case and work hard in every single case. But we also need to be aware of other factors outside of what you might normally see in another kind of criminal case.
There is no question that dealing with death is very intense. One of my brothers was a victim, homicide victim a few years back, and sitting through the courtroom and just as a spectator, the level of anxiety was tremendous. Just very somber, painful event, listening to the pathologist discuss the evidence. So those cases are quite intense. I've had some other cases that you do the same level of work. I've always prepared quite diligently for all of my cases. Cross my T's, dot my I's, do what I try to do a very, very good job. But there's no question that in the death penalty cases, it is just somber and just very intense and painful to bear. But you have to do it. It's got to be dealt with the same diligence, if not more, than you would something less intense, such as a petty theft.
Thank you. As part of my training to become a Superior Court Commissioner, I toured the death chamber in San Quentin, and it was a somber moment. It did truly put into perspective the seriousness of the work of a Superior Court judge and a Superior Court Commissioner. Certainly, I would be sensitive to the needs and emotions of jurors and be very aware of that during the voir dire process. Knowing that it was going to be a death penalty case, I would also very early on speak with the criminal presiding judge and the presiding judge to let them know about the time that this case was going to take, that I would not be available to hear other cases because it would impact the workload of the other judges. And I would simply follow the law in a firm and fair manner because that would be required of me.
Please discuss the tension and resolution between justice for individuals versus protection for society.
Well, the way our Constitution is actually written, it is more about justice for individuals. We talk about the Bill of Rights, the right against search and seizure, unreasonable search and seizure, the right to have an attorney, the right to against cruel and unusual punishment. That's the way our justice system is designed. So, as it turns out, first and foremost, a judge's duty is to protect the rights of the individual that comes before that judge in any courthouse or any court matter. But we also need to be concerned about protection of the public, and that is where our legislature comes in. These are different branches of law at tension, and I believe the question is the tension and resolution. And so when we talk about enforcing the laws, a judge does have the duty to enforce the laws as they are written. And so that is the balance that we need to apply. It is the balance that we need to apply from our own perspective of having worked, from my own perspective of having worked in those two fields as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney. Public safety is incredibly important. We all know that sitting here as members of the public.
Every day when I hear my cases, I know that I have to protect the rights of everybody. In my particular work, we rarely get attorneys coming into our hearing rooms, so we have people who are self-represented. And I have the discretion to ask questions of the parties, and I have to protect their rights. I walk a really fine line because people do not know how to put on their cases, so I have to teach them about something called the rules of evidence and how they can properly ask questions. So it is a big job for me to protect their rights, their individual rights. And we do, going into a more broader answer here, we do have the legislature. We do have those laws that are created by the legislature. We have the judges enforcing that. It is a check and balance system. And keeping that in mind, we as judges need to protect everybody that comes before our courtroom. Every single day, that is the foremost importance.
Certainly protecting our communities and our neighborhoods are of vital importance, but individual rights are also vitally important. And as bench officers, it is our obligation to ensure that we are protecting individuals' rights, that all of the state and constitutional rights are protected, whether you have been falsely accused of a crime, or whether you have been the victim of a crime, or your home has been burglarized. It is our job as the bench officer to make sure that you get a full and fair hearing. We need to be aware of what your rights are and make sure that when you leave our courtroom that you have had a fair hearing and that we have followed principles of justice. And I take that obligation very seriously every time I take the bench.
The fundamental reason courts exist, the fundamental role a judge plays is doing just that. Balancing the need for the protection of the public versus the rights of the individual. In dictatorships, lock them all up, we don't care about the individual, and there's no judges with the power to stop the dictators from doing what they do. There is a balance in every single case that has to be struck. What is the rights of the individual versus what is the need for society to protect itself? Every person has rights, but that includes the victims. They have a right not to be robbed, shot, stabbed. They have the rights to have their homes protected. But the defendants also have to be protected from the government doing too much. That's what a judge exists for. That's what, as a prosecutor, I have always sought to do. I make sure the defendants' rights are protected as well. I reject search warrants all the time, saying, no, you need more. We reject cases all the time. There's not enough evidence here to charge. That's what a prosecutor does. That's what a judge does. That's the essential role of the courts.
What do you see as the challenges facing the justice system in the next decade?
Well, we have a shortage of funds. We need more money. It's been very bad since about 2008. Lots of money it's gone. We just need more to build more programs. We have the new AB 109, the realignment situation. We need to decide what to do. Do we expand the jails? Do we decrease the bail? What do we do? We have a lot of work to do. There's a big thing going on in Salinas. We talk about the beds, what we need with the current jail system, what are we going to do with the people that have been let out per AB 109. So those are challenges that we need to discuss with our local officials to see what it is that we are going to be doing. Definitely funding is a very big issue so that our programs can continue on forward. We need to help people, and so we need money for that. That's the big challenge, I think, finances.
We have not had a full reinvestment by the legislature into our courts, and so there has been a delay in justice over the last few years. We have had to close our courtrooms at 2 o'clock in the afternoon across all of the courts. We had to close down the King City Courthouse, and that has created problems in the timeliness of access, as well as people being able to come in and process their cases. I don't know if we're ever going to get that level of funding restored, so we need to think creatively. I know that looking forward, I am told that we have more violent crime in our community now because of the use of drugs that is so prevalent. We need to address that issue. We also will be continuing, as I understand it, to enlarge the scope of our community-based programs as directed by the legislature and our evidence-based policies. What I think we need to look at over the next 10 years is assisting the mental health population that are now incarcerated in our jails and are not receiving any programs or any services.
Our judicial system is going through the largest change we've experienced in over a generation. Realignment is the governor's way of taking a problem at the state level and shoving it onto the counties. Our courts, our jail is now taking over the role of the prisons. The prisons are full. They don't have any more funding for any more. So basically, they've just shoved the problem onto the counties. The jail is not built to house people for years on end. Prisons are built for that. But now we have people in our jails that are being housed for years on end. The advantage, the one positive to this is they've given us more money and they've given us more freedom to experiment with new ideas, to try through probation, to find new ways of dealing with crime, with rehabilitation. I'm proud to be endorsed by the probation officers. I'm proud to be endorsed by the sheriff's candidates. And working together, the courts, the sheriff's office, and probation can find new ways to deal with old problems and hopefully better ways to deal with old problems.
Thank you. I think in the next decade, the greatest challenge to the court is to do more with less. And the last time I've seen the belts this tight was when I was a supervisor in New York on 9/11 and in the years to come. And our budgets were shrinking every year. And as the one responsible for making sure that the district attorneys in my office in the Bronx were able to be effective, as we had fewer and fewer people to do the job and fewer resources to the job, I know the challenges that are facing this particular court. We talked about already about AB 109. We talked about how that is affecting the county. It is primarily a financial issue, but we do have to figure out ways to identify those offenders that can be rehabilitated and brought back into society in a way that saves funds versus those that cannot. And we also have a huge underserved population of non-English speakers. Our South County Courthouse has been closed down, and it's an incredible burden on those who need services and can't afford them. So that's something else we need to do.
Given budget constraints, how would you maintain the balance between justice and your budget constraints?
That is something that we talk about on a monthly basis when the judges and commissioners meet. How can we do more with less? How can we become more efficient? Because as I was mentioning, we may not get that reinvestment. So we look at the way that we are serving administratively in the court, the way we're processing, in my particular case, family law cases. If we can, the first time we touch a file, see if we can help the parties resolve the case so that they're not continually needing to return to court and utilizing our services. We are paying more attention to the populations who are coming into the court to find out how can we help streamline processes so that we can find out what people's needs are and meet those needs in a more timely and efficient way. We haven't necessarily needed to ask those questions before, but it's a new time with a lot of new judicial officers who have great creative ideas, and it's an exciting time for the court to be able to have these conversations.
You know, I was a member of a subcommittee that the Monterey County Bar Association put together, where we got together and threw around ideas on ways to make the courts work better, ways to change scheduling and timing so that there were no bottlenecks and we could get through the day faster. People wouldn't be sitting around, cases wouldn't be continued over and over and over again, costing money. I worked with probation officers to some degree, got their input. We worked with the criminal defense bar, the prosecutor's office, the judges, and we found ways to improve what we've been doing. That's by getting everyone together and listening to everyone and getting ideas from all the people involved. Juliet Peck was part of that commission, and we did improve how things were handled. And today, the courts run better. And there are more changes to be made, and we just need people with drive and interest to change them and to continue to try to improve. Anything can be improved, and it needs to be.
One of the things I learned by having a small business of my own is that you need to be efficient. I'm a solo practitioner, and I've learned how to open up a practice with as low overhead as possible. And what I did was I embraced technology in a way that allows me to save paper, it allows me to save time, it allows me to save resources. I'm also a pretty good bargain hunter, so every single thing in my office is at the lowest price possible. So I think what that may bring to the court is a level of scrutiny that we need to have in our budgets. When we look at how much money is spent on each line item, we have to question ourselves, does that money need to be spent and is there a better way? The other thing I see is the culture of the courthouse. And I think judges can play a large role in affecting the way that the lawyers act amongst each other and that all of us interact amongst each other, because there's a great deal of waste of time. A lot of times we go to court and you realize the only reason we're there in court to meet is because nobody talked amongst themselves beforehand to perhaps work out a resolution. And I think that judges can do a great deal to foster greater communication and greater efficiency amongst all the parties.
In my current agency, we get funding from the Department of Labor, and we have rules that we have to follow, and one of them is you better resolve this case by this deadline. So we have deadlines. We are scheduled. We have 30-day and then the 45-day deadline. Sometimes I get to hear a case the day when it is due. So guess who gets to do the typing? I type my decision so I can get it out that same day. And we're under constant scrutiny by the Department of Labor. If you do not comply with these deadlines, the funding will be removed, which then would mean layoffs for our agency. So we rarely continue a case. In fact, we don't, and if we do, we really have to answer to the presiding judge as to why we did it. So I think efficiency is something that I will definitely bring to the bench. I am really good at moving cases very fast. I work really hard to get them done. I sometimes stay there till 7 p.m. My last hearing has got to end, and I don't leave until my decision is done and over with and mailed at the door. So that is what I can contribute. I am very good at planning my time, very good at getting cases through the system. So that's what I will contribute.
What community activities are you involved in that will enhance your qualifications to be a Superior Court judge?
Well, right now, my community involvement is with 2 young girls. I've got a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old, and frankly, that takes up my days, in addition to my full-time job, of course. I know a lot about parks. I know a lot about daycare. I know a lot about changing diapers. But I have learned a tremendous amount in this process of running for office. I've met so many people and talked to so many people about what is important to them in this community, what they see as the biggest problems, their concerns about gangs and their family safety. Those things will serve me well as sitting as a judge.
In addition to work and family, I'm currently on the board of directors for Door to Hope. This is a local nonprofit agency that deals mostly with addiction recovery for women and children, and I'm proud to say we're one of the only agencies in town that also gives women with children a place to live who need that help. The reason I got involved was actually another thing that's treated by Door to Hope, which is also one of the only places that does this, fetal alcohol syndrome. It comes from a case I prosecuted as well as from 2 clients I represented. And I've learned so much about this issue and how it affects our judicial system. There's a somewhat off-color phrase about it, but it's the girls get knocked up and the boys get locked up with fetal alcohol syndrome. And this is something that I've dealt with closely as a member of the board, as well as addiction recovery. And since drug addiction is a huge part of our criminal justice system, I think that would enhance my ability because I have that background and that understanding of what's going on with some of these syndromes.
I spent my entire morning at Hardin Middle School. It was career day. And I get invited to a lot of these events. And I love to do that. I took my robe and I put it on. And I told these kids about what I do. And they were ecstatic. And they said, how can I become a judge too? And that was inspirational. And I do a lot of that kind of community work. There are many underprivileged kids out in that community where I came from. And for me, I believe I have a responsibility to leave this world a better place than when I got here. That's why I spend a lot of my time at United, trying to get people past their fear of the deaths, the gangs, all the problems that they have in the East Side. I do a lot of work in Health Center. We do resource fairs. We tell people about health and what services they can receive. I work closely with Parks and Rec. My little brother works there, so I go along with him to many, many of the events. And that is to give people information on what is available to them to make their lives better.
One of my very favorite activities, I will call out my husband, Michael Wilden, who put together the high school mock trial competition 16 years ago. And I have been fortunate to be able to participate in the high school mock trial competition since its inception in various roles. And it is amazing to see the high school students who initially have no experience with the law, who are working closely with attorney coaches and with their school coaches, and then with our volunteer judges who are serving as the mock trial judges, and see them shine and develop and see the self-confidence that they have. But I've also been working throughout the community in meeting leaders and trying to team together leaders of different agencies to be able to work collectively for the at-risk children, and so that we can better meet those needs, whether through the foster care children, the children who need reunification services through the YWCA, and throughout the agency, and that will serve me as a judge.
If you were elected to the bench and were considering a matter where an attorney represented one party and the other party was self-represented, or where there was a clear inadequacy of representation on one side versus the other, what actions, if any, would you take as a judge to ensure fairness?
Well, and I'm glad we touched on that issue because that is the judge's role, is to ensure fairness. And so if we see an imbalance, I think there's a duty to right that imbalance. Presumably, by the nature of the question, the assumption is that the represented party has a better hand. That's not always true. But with that assumption, I think that knowledge is power, and the unrepresented party would need to be given information by the court about resources available. And this comes back to our budget question. That we have a self-help office in the Monterey Courthouse. The hours are limited, but there are a lot of hardworking, wonderful people there. And I think as a judge, it would be incumbent upon us to direct unrepresented individuals to places where they can get help, because the last thing you want to see is somebody not getting a fair shake just because they didn't have representation.
When I was a workers' compensation defense attorney here in Salinas with the state fund, we have had a person there, and she's still there, who is the information and assistance officer. And she has a list of lawyers in town, so whenever somebody is unrepresented, we always directed them. It was not unusual that I, as a defense lawyer, had somebody on the other side who was unrepresented. And so I would always direct that person, go see the INA officer so you can get a list of lawyers so that you can be represented. And that is very important. We need to direct people as a judge. You have to tell people what is available, help them get a lawyer, we direct them to the right places. I do that quite a bit now. When people say, I would like to be represented, where can I go? And that is part of my job to actually, that's one of the rare occasions when I do continue a case, when somebody says, I would like to have counsel. And my job is to say, you have that right, you have that due process right. And then I suggest names and then direct them the right way to get assistance.
The majority of the litigants who appear before me are self-represented litigants. 95% of those litigants are at or below the federal poverty guideline, and they cannot afford attorneys. But they can go to the second floor to the law library, and they can use the treatises that are available to them. One thing that I think really helps the self-represented litigants is when the bench officer takes the bench and explains what the process is going to be for the day, and explains specifically what evidence I'm looking at, which family code provisions, what will I be listening to, where do you need to direct your testimony this morning. If someone needs more time because he or she is self-represented and wants to avail himself or herself of the law library, we can call that case again in the afternoon. We can give them the time that is needed. And I do think that when the litigants have an understanding of specifically the evidence that I'm looking for and I need to consider to make my ruling, it helps them focus their arguments, and then we don't have the issue of an inadequate representation on one side and inadequate self-representation on the other side.
Our criminal justice system is an excellent system. It usually results in the appropriate rulings. It doesn't work well when people don't do their jobs right. If the judge and the prosecutor and the defense attorney all do their jobs right, the right result always comes about. That's been my experience. When a judge doesn't do their job right, or a prosecutor doesn't do their job right, or a defense attorney doesn't do their job right because they're phoning it in because they didn't get paid enough to do their job that day, that's when injustice happens. It is the worst thing to see it happening in a courtroom. Everyone watches it and sees it happen. As far as self-representation, the Supreme Court has said it's a right that anyone can represent themselves in court. They don't have to have an attorney. There's an exception for the people who are not mentally competent to do so. And it's always a bad idea in criminal courts, and yet, if it's a right, they have to be allowed to express it even when it's wrong to do so.
So this is your closing. I know I told you a minute and a half, but I'm going to give you each 2 minutes, and Ms. Williams is going to start.
Thank you for having us here. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this wonderful event and for letting us present before you. I have been an administrative law judge for almost 6 years, doing the same type of work that a superior court does. I manage my own courtroom. I know how to do high-paced work, and I know how to manage my time efficiently. I have been in the courtroom for many, many years of my career, which was 70 years before I was appointed to this position. And approximately half of that time, 7, 8 years as a litigator. I've seen many, many, many courtrooms. I know how to conduct myself in court, and I know what to expect of lawyers who appear in court. I also am from the local community. I know that community, and it is important, I believe, if you are to dispense justice, to know those who appear before you. I grew up in Salinas, and I know a lot of that community that appears before our courts, and I think that that is important. I hope that when you decide as to who your next judge will be, you will consider all of my work experience, my current job. Everything that I have put on the table is my work experience, my local ties to the community, the work I do in the community. And I hope that you will allow me to serve you on the bench. Thank you.
And thank you again for co-hosting this evening, and for each of you for coming out and taking an interest in the judicial candidates. And I do encourage you to vote. This is a very exciting time, and every vote will count. After I served as a federal law clerk in the Central District of Los Angeles, I moved to Monterey County. I have had my entire legal career here in Monterey County, representing plaintiffs and defendants in each of the types that are local, the water issues that are before us, the land issues, CEQA matters, landlord-tenant, every case type that happens here in Monterey County, I represented. I represented clients in criminal matters. I worked in business transactional matters before I came to the work of the court. I have a very broad civil litigation background that I bring to the court, but I also have a depth and breadth of family law experience that is vital to the work of the court and to the members of our community. Most of the members of our community who come into the court are not actually coming in as victims or as criminal defendants. They're coming into my courtroom because they need resolution in their family law issues. They need protection through a restraining order. They need to be able to move forward with their lives. And that is the work that I have been able to do for the court. I do understand that the presiding judge could assign me to any of our divisions, and I am ready to hit the ground running in any of those categories because of the overlay of family law in each other case type. Certainly, my passion is in helping the families who appear before me, and I would love to have the ability to take on a leadership role in the family law department and serve in a more long-term capacity. I am honored to have had Judge Kingsley's endorsement, the endorsement of law enforcement, of criminal defense attorneys, of the attorneys throughout the community, and I would ask for your endorsement and vote on June 3rd. Thank you very much.
When I got out of college, I spent a year driving an ambulance. This was down in Los Angeles and Orange counties. One particular night, a young boy, I think he was 17, maybe 18, was shot in the spine. He was just caught in some crossfire in a gang fight. And I was told, drive him to the trauma center as fast as you can, but don't bump him. And every time we hit any kind of bump, he would scream. And so when I went to law school, that kind of experience stuck with me. And I realized in law school that the kind of lawyer I wanted to be was the kind of lawyer that served his community and fought to protect his community. And I've been doing that for 16 years as a prosecutor. I have been endorsed by the judges who I appear before every day. The criminal judges have overwhelmingly supported me in this race. I've been supported by the Deputy Sheriff's Association, the Monterey Police Department, the probation officers, the Marina Police Department, Salinas Police. Those people who have dedicated their careers to public service and to protecting our community, they support me for this job. I want to do my best to live up to their expectations. I want to be the best possible judge, open-minded, fair to every person who comes before me, but dedicated to community service, dedicated to protecting our community. If you vote for me, I will do my best to live up to your expectations as well. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate a lot of the thoughtful questions. They were all very thoughtful questions that we've heard tonight, and I think we've all done our best to give you excuse me, the most thoughtful answers possible. You've listened to us and gotten to know us as candidates, I think, but I hope you've gotten a sense of us as people as well. That's something that I've tried to communicate to you during the course of this night. And I want to share with you a couple of things about my background that I think will lend toward becoming a better judge. I think as judges, you want to see somebody with a diversified background, somebody who's done a couple of different things in their lives, more than just one dimension. You know, I grew up in Southern California and went to college there, but I went to law school on the East Coast and served as a prosecutor in the Bronx that I've already told you about. And in that role, especially involving the vulnerable victims that I had, I felt that I really got to know people and a lot of the relationships and issues that everyone has dealt with. That's only been expanded as a defense attorney, as I've had clients who have been accused of wrongdoing, and I've gotten to see the events that lead up to that and the events that follow that. And that, I think, has given me a very broad perspective on our criminal justice system. And as I mentioned before, all of that work has also touched upon civil practice as well, involving other attorneys and judges on various civil matters, including some of the things I mentioned: embezzlement, theft, family issues, lawsuits involving contract disputes. And when we look at this election, I'm hoping what you'll take a second to evaluate our backgrounds, our diversity, our experience, and you'll see that what we want in our judges is somebody who's going to work hard and has the balance that we need to understand each and every person that comes before them and can treat everyone fairly and with respect. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.